Kenny Minchey was a big get for Notre Dame's 2023 recruiting class. Now here we are, 2 years later, heading into 2025, and he has got his first real opportunity to compete for the starting job. Can he be QB1, or is he just the odd man out? We answer all that and more on today's Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into another edition of Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018, and now I'm a producer at Fox Sports, and I appreciate you joining me here on Thursday, February 13th, and thanks for making this your first listen of the day. Quick reminder to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching along today, or subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. All right, this is part two of our three-part series breaking down the Notre Dame quarterback battle. This is the most important quarterback competition for the Irish since 2016, and there are three legitimate contenders: Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, and CJ Carr. Yesterday, the focus was on Steve Angeli. I went over the case for him to start, the case against him, and whether or not I think he'll actually win the job. But today, we are turning our focus to the rising junior, Kenny Minchey. Some people are counting him out in this quarterback competition, and I believe that is a big mistake. He has got the arm talent, mobility, and the upside to make a real push for the job. But if he doesn't win the job now, his future at Notre Dame is uncertain. We break it all down today. Then on Monday of next week, we're going to do the same for the young phenom, CJ Carr. We're talking men's hoops tomorrow with Tom Noyes, so you're not going to want to miss that. But let's get into it for today. Should Kenny Minchey be Notre Dame's next starting quarterback? I think he has a better case than some people might think, even though we have not seen a whole lot of him on the field. Let's get into the case for him. Number one, his arm talent is special. He might be the best pure passer in this competition. Gino Guidugli, Notre Dame's quarterback coach, called him a gunslinger, and I think that is a great representation of what he can do with his arm. You can use like all the quarterback cliches with Kenny Minchey. The ball jumps out of his hand. He throws a catchable ball. He's got a great spiral, and it's just a great quarterback aesthetic. That might not be the concrete X and O's that you're looking for, but just watch Kenny Minchey throw. It's special. I remember watching him during the spring game his last season. He did not play well in the spring game his freshman year, but he was an early enrollee freshman. I don't really put too much stock into that. But his second season, I felt like the complete opposite emotion compared to the first time that I saw Phil Jurkovec throw the ball in a Notre Dame spring game. It was like, what was that? But Kenny Minchey passes the eye test when you watch him throw. You don't need to be like a quarterback guru to watch Kenny Minchey and recognize that he's got a ton of raw talent. That was on full display in the spring game last season. He finished 12 of 19 passing for 123 passing yards, and he had a one passing touchdown and an INT. The pick was bad, but other than that, I thought he threw the ball really well in that game. His touchdown pass to Micah Gilbert was a perfect throw. Drake Bowen was crashing down right at him, but Minchey stepped up and delivered a perfect throw to the pylon, and it was one of the best passes of the day for any quarterback. And that play was set up by a great throw and catch to KK Smith 2 plays prior on a wheel route out of the slot. That ball that he threw to KK Smith was in the air for about 35 yards, and he hit him in stride. It was a great pass. Now, KK Smith was wide open on the play, so it wasn't as impressive as the throw to Micah Gilbert, where he actually had pretty tight coverage, but threw the ball to Gilbert in a spot where only he could catch it, and he caught it for a touchdown. So I was really impressed by what I saw from Kenny Minchey in the spring game. He knew where he was going with the football. He was decisive and made great throws on time. And when it comes to quarterbacks, I think that there are some things that are just inherent, like you can't teach them. Guys either have them or have these traits or they don't. I would consider ball placement and touch two of those things that you can't really teach, and Kenny Minchey has them both. So that's really important. The second big reason why I think Kenny Minchey has a great chance to be the starting quarterback is that he's the most mobile guy in the room, and he might be the best fit for what Mike Denbrock wants in a quarterback. He's not a scrambler to the extent that Ian Book was, and they certainly would not use Kenny Minchey in the designed run game as much as they did with Riley Leonard. But he adds a different dimension with his legs compared to Steve Angeli and CJ Carr. In the spring game that I just referenced from last year, he finished that game with 6 carries and 48 rushing yards, but he actually suffered an 8-yard sack. So his true rushing yard count was 40 yards, but he ran for 48, sack adjusted. I thought that was really impressive. He's got good size. He's 6'2", 207, so not the biggest guy, not like Riley Leonard, but he can move for a guy of his stature. Plus, he's got great instincts with the ball in his hands. It's not like one of those quarterbacks when they start running and you're like, oh my God, hold the ball, or get down, or just get out of dodge, right? That's not the case with Kenny Minchey. He knows where he's going when he has the football in his hands. The most impressive part of his performance in that spring game, besides the beautiful passes, he converted 5 first downs with his legs and had a rushing touchdown. The touchdown was great. I'll get to that in a second. But one play really stood out. He was in the pocket, almost got ripped to the ground by his shoulder. I couldn't really decipher who it was, which defender it was, but they grabbed him from inside of his shoulder pads and ripped him down almost to the ground. But he shook it off, then escaped, ran 12 yards for a first down, and it was such a great play. I'll admit, I did not think that Kenny Minchey was that good of a runner when he signed with Notre Dame. Like, you watch his high school tape, they just didn't use him as a runner all that much. But then watching him in the spring game last year, I was blown away with how well he ran. He also ran for that 60-yard touchdown that I mentioned earlier, and it was a quarterback power to the left side. It was not a scramble. It was a designed run to the quarterback. He showed great patience on the play, dove into the end zone in between a bunch of tacklers. It's important to point out that even though I'm mentioning his spring game, he was live for this game. So it wasn't like he was just running, the defense didn't have an answer for him, they couldn't tackle him. No, they hit him on this play, but he ran to the left, waited for his blockers, saw a seam, hit it, scored a touchdown. So I thought that was really impressive. And his overall athleticism is just, it really stands out to me. When he came in during the fourth quarter of the Purdue game, one of the very few times in his career that he actually got on the field on a Saturday, they ran another designed run for him to the left side. It looked very similar to the one they ran in the spring game. He ran right past Dylan Thieneman, who is now with Oregon. Remember, he was on preseason Thorpe Award watch list. Just ran right by him, got to the edge, and was fast enough to run in the end zone for a touchdown. He's an athlete, and he's patient with the ball in his hands. And I think the willingness from Mike Denbrock to call these designs runs for him is telling, because he didn't do that with the other quarterbacks. He's not running QB power for Steve Angeli, really, or CJ Carr. Maybe we just haven't seen it from those guys yet, but that's what he wanted to go with when Kenny Minchey was out there. And that really stands out to me because we saw this past year how much Mike Denbrock wants to run designed run for the quarterback. He did it a ton with Riley Leonard. He did a ton with Jane Daniels at LSU. He also did the same with Deshaun Kaiser when he was at Notre Dame. So Minchey doesn't have the running ability of Riley Leonard or Jane Daniels, but I think he provides the best run threat of any of the other quarterbacks. Like Ian Book ran for 546 yards in 2019. I don't think Kenny Minchey could get to that number, but I wouldn't be shocked if he got close to that if he ends up winning the starting job. The third reason why I like Kenny Minchey to win the starting job is because he's got time to grow and develop to reach his full potential. Like, people forget, Kenny Minchey was a big-time recruit for the Irish out of high school. They flipped him from Pitt a month before the early signing period, which is great, especially if you're a Pat Narduzzi hater like myself, because you just know how pissed off that made him that his prize quarterback recruit in the class bailed on him right at the 11th hour, especially to go to a Notre Dame where a school that he absolutely despises. And he was a good recruit. He was the 170th ranked player in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, and the number 14 quarterback in the class. So not necessarily top 5 like CJ Carr, but he was no slouch. And he made it to the Elite 11 finals with the best quarterbacks in the country and performed well. I also like the fact that he's had to sit for 2 years instead of 1, because I think that extra year does make a big difference. A lot of guys come in and they start after redshirting their freshman year and they're just not ready yet, whether it be physically or mentally, to play the quarterback position. But Minchey has had to wait for 2 years, and yet he still has 3 more years of eligibility. So if he does win the job, he could be the quarterback for 2 to 3 years for Notre Dame. And they have been looking to develop a multi-year starter for a really long time. That has not happened since Ian Book. Minchey could be that guy, even if everyone just assumes the future is CJ Carr. So it's clear Minchey's got talent. There's no doubt about that. He can throw a really pretty ball and he can run. But if he is the answer, or he's going to be the answer, why haven't we heard anything about him making a serious move up the depth chart? When we come back, we're going to break down the reasons why he won't be Notre Dame's starting quarterback. Today's episode is presented by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed a chance. Plus, the app is so easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, now that we went over all the reasons why Kenny Minchey could win the starting job, let's go over the case against him. The number one thing that stands out is his lack of experience. This one is obvious. He has never played a game against legitimate competition at the college level, and he's been with the program for 2 years. Like, I get a kick out of some people, and some people are in the comments, but also some people in the media as well, who are certain that Kenny Minchey should be the guy. Based on what? Like a couple spring games, some practice videos, and what else? Like, even if you watch him throw on air in practice, that's not an indication of how well he's going to play on Saturdays going up against some of the best teams in college football. He has thrown for 3 passes in his entire career. 3. And even though he came in against Purdue and scored a touchdown, the score was 59-7, and it was Purdue. So I just don't think that he has done enough for anyone to say that he should definitively be the guy. And maybe he ends up being the starting quarterback. That could absolutely be true. Those people could be right. But there's just not enough evidence for fans or people in the media to definitively say that he's the best option. And that isn't just specific to Kenny Minchey, by the way. That also applies to CJ Carr as well. We might think that we know how good CJ Carr is, but we really don't know until we actually see these guys play on Saturdays. We have no idea what it's going to look like in a real live game situation. Like I said, the TD against Purdue was nice, but that really does not tell you how well he's going to run or pass the ball against, let's say, Miami in the season opener or Texas A&M in the home opener. And going into last season, I thought there was a legitimate chance that Kenny Minchey could beat out Steve Angeli to be the backup quarterback, and we would actually start to see him get some of those reps in garbage time. But that never happened. As a matter of fact, I don't think it was ever close because Notre Dame was going out of their way to get Steve Angeli in the game during the second half of these blowouts. And there were multiple times where Steve Angeli would come in the third quarter, and I thought, okay, maybe they'll let Steve Angeli get a couple series, and then Kenny Minchey would come in during the fourth quarter, and then he would get a couple series. Nope, it never turned out like that. He only got in against Purdue because, like I said, the score was 59-7. So if they thought there was a real battle for Kenny Minchey to be that number 2 quarterback, they certainly didn't act like it because Kenny Minchey was not getting any legitimate reps during the games on Saturdays, and opportunities were there for him to get a shot. So rather than split the reps even a little bit, they gave them all to Angeli because they clearly felt more comfortable with him going in the game if something ever happened to Riley Leonard. And as I said in yesterday's show with Steve Angeli, it's kind of crazy that Riley Leonard never missed a significant amount of time, given the amount of times that they ran him and all the big hits that he took throughout the year. Plus, he had been pretty injury-prone in his career prior to last season. But it never happened. Steve Angeli never really came in beyond that one series against Penn State, which, as we talked about, was huge for this team in their pursuit of the national championship. So I think those actions, I should say, suggest that there is a pretty significant gap between Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchey. So Minchey is going to have to close that to have any shot at being the starting quarterback. The second concern I have about Kenny Minchey is he doesn't protect the ball as well as he should. Minchey had some great moments in that spring game, no doubt. We already talked about them. But he was also responsible for two 2 turnovers in that game. The first one was bad. He threw a really bad interception. Now, granted, it was 3rd and 14, and he was trying to make a play, but they were in plus territory, and it was only the first quarter. He did not have to force the throw in there like he did. The blue squad got some pressure on him with 4 guys. Minchey rushed his throwing motion, tried to fit the ball in a window that didn't even exist, and he threw it right into double coverage, and it just looked bad. Okay, his footwork was bad, and he tried to make a throw downfield off his left foot with the defender right in his face, and he threw it right into the hands of Luke Talich. Even though he had running back Jabron Payne, remember him? He was wide open for a check down that could have at least set them up for a better shot at a field goal. Instead, it was a turnover. Then he ended up getting strip sacked right before the end of the first half. This one wasn't as bad as the pick because it was the last play of the first half, and R.J. Oben just absolutely cooked Charles Jagasaw on the play, came in from right behind Kenny Minchey, punched the ball out. But that's 2 turnovers in one half. And credit to Kenny Minchey for rebounding and playing well after the 2 turnovers, but those are the kinds of things you see in a spring game, and you wonder, how often is he making those decisions in practice? Like, having a gunslinger is great, until that gunslinger starts throwing the ball to the other team and those interceptions start to mount up. One of the things to remember about Marcus Freeman is he comes from the Jim Tressel line of coaching. Even though he never coached for Jim Tressel, he played for him and considers Tressel a mentor. And Jim Tressel might be the most conservative coach ever. He certainly had an extremely conservative mindset when it came to his quarterbacks, and he wanted them to limit mistakes as much as humanly possible. Like, this guy won a national championship with Craig Krenzel as his starting quarterback. I think Marcus Freeman has some of that philosophy, at least as it pertains to turning the ball over on offense. He does not want a quarterback who's going to go out there and be willy-nilly with the ball in his hands. And I think if he's worried about Kenny Minchey turning the ball over too much, that really hurts Minchey's chances of winning that starting job. Third concern I have about Kenny Minchey. I'm not sure if he possesses the leadership qualities you need to be quarterback. And something that I really want to stress here, this is not a knock on his personality at all. He seems like a great dude. He's just a little soft-spoken, and that's totally fine. I hate to even bring this up because I've never met him. I'm not in the locker room, but it's something that you have to consider when you're evaluating these young quarterbacks who project to be starters, right? Like, can he command the huddle when he's out there on the field? Can he lead an offense? Can he demand the respect of an entire locker room? I don't know the answer to any of these questions that I'm asking, but based on some of the things that I've seen and heard, I think he's just kind of taken a back seat these past couple of years, which isn't a huge surprise, right? Like, no one really wants to hear QB3 riling up the team and being the first guy out of the tunnel or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that. I certainly understand that aspect of it. But at some point, you have to make your voice heard, and people have to look at you like the guy if you're going to be the starting quarterback. And you at least have to be looked at in that way to have any real shot of being the starting quarterback. And maybe that's all happening right now in winter workouts. I certainly hope that's the case because this team needs leaders. But you can't only lead by example if you're the starting quarterback. You also have to be a vocal leader as well on and off the field. And I'm just not sure Minchey possesses those qualities right now. That doesn't mean he can't develop them or that's not coming out right now. It's just one of the concerns I have at this point in time. And the last thing on Kenny Minchey and the case against him, and this feels a little bit weird, but I do think that it's important. We never hear anything about it, ever. It's something that really stood out to me after the national championship. So Kirk Herbstreit went on Pat McAfee's show the day after the national championship and was raving about Notre Dame's future. And I know that bringing Kirk Herbstreit up right now is probably not the best time because he certainly took some heat for some comments he made throughout the college football playoff, and I think the heat was justified in that sense. But he was talking about Notre Dame just after calling the national championship game between Notre Dame and Ohio State. He's talking to Pat McAfee about the future of Notre Dame. Obviously, they lost quarterback Riley Leonard. Herbstreit spoke very highly of CJ Carr, said he's a guy that you build your entire program around, give him the keys, and let him go. He also mentioned during that conversation about CJ Carr that Carr would have to beat out Angeli. He did not mention Kenny Minchey one time. Where do you think that Herbstreit was getting that information about CJ Carr, because it's not like he's been around Notre Dame practices or that he watched a ton of CJ Carr coming out of high school. He heard that from the Notre Dame coaching staff because he had just spent some time with them during the production meetings leading up to that game. It's just one example, but it's an important one, because when I was working at ESPN, I covered some of the college football playoff games in the national championship, and I know that the announcers have more access to the head coach and the coordinators and the position coaches for the championship and the college football playoff, way more compared to any other game. So I'm sure the future of the quarterback room came up with Kirk and Marcus Freeman, or Kirk and Mike Denbrock, or anyone else during those conversations, and I believe Herbstreit was reciting basically what the Notre Dame coaching staff was telling him. And if they're not bringing up Kenny Minchey, then I have concerns about whether Kenny Minchey has a real shot to be the starting quarterback. But all that being said, I still believe that Kenny Minchey has a ton of potential. But if he's not the best option now, what does that mean for his future? So coming up next, we're going to break down his path to winning the job and his future with the Notre Dame football program. So what's Kenny Minchey's path to winning the job? Let's do the same exercise that I did yesterday with Steve Angeli. Close your eyes, unless you're driving, of course, and picture the Notre Dame offense coming out on the field against Miami in the season opener. Can you imagine Kenny Minchey being the quarterback to lead him out there? I actually can. It would be a surprise to a lot of people, but it wouldn't be a groundbreaking shock, right? I do believe that there is enough in there for him to be the starting quarterback. But what needs to happen? Well, he needs to be a vocal leader during winter workouts and make sure that everyone on the team looks at him as a serious option to be the starting quarterback. That's part one. He's not going to win the job in winter workouts, but he at least can earn the respect of all of his teammates and all the coaches and everyone in that program that, hey, Kenny Minchey needs to be taken seriously as a real option to be QB1. Then he has to go out and he has to dominate in spring practice. He can't just play pretty well. He has to be outstanding. He has to be the best quarterback out of him, Angeli, and Carr. And I know that's a lot to ask. I get it. But this is going to be his third spring practice. The time for him to make a move is right now. He cannot afford to wait any longer. His first spring practice, you kind of get a pass because you're an early enrollee freshman. You're drinking out of a fire hose. It's a lot coming at you at once, so we can kind of give him a pass there. His second spring practice, he made a big move, I think. He looked really good in the spring game despite the interception and the fumble. So I think he took a big step forward. Now he has to take an even bigger step because this is a pivotal moment for Kenny Minchey in his college football career. It's also a pivotal moment for Steve Angeli. And even though CJ Carr still has 4 more years of eligibility, this is a big moment for him as well. He's also still recovering from that elbow injury, so we don't know if he's going to be completely 100% throughout spring practice. We do not know of any injury concerns for Kenny Minchey, so he has to go out there and dominate in spring practice. If he does not outplay Angeli, probably by a significant margin, he's not going to have any chance to start, in my opinion, because Kenny Minchey does not have the experience. He doesn't have the time with the program that Steve Angeli has, and if he's not able to close the gap now, it's probably not going to happen for him at Notre Dame, and that is why I don't think he will ultimately win the job. When you look at this room, I think Steve Angeli is the safe choice because he's going into his 4th year with the program. He has played a pretty good amount of college football. He started a game, performed well. He's come in a bunch during garbage time. They've let him run with the ones. He's been the backup for the past 2 seasons. So he has had to prepare as the starter for the past 2 years. Meanwhile, Kenny Minchey has just been quarterback 3, waiting for his turn, and he just really hasn't had much of a chance. And I believe that the program, the coaching staff, looks at CJ Carr as the long-term answer. So even if Steve Angeli is able to go out there and win the job for 1 year, they still project CJ Carr to be the starter next year and beyond. And I just think that Kenny Minchey is caught in between. He's got a lot of potential. He's certainly good enough to compete for the job, but he's not dominant enough to demand the job, if that makes sense. And if they do start Minchey, if Minchey does win this job, Angeli is gone, and you also run the risk of losing CJ Carr as well. And on one hand, that might not seem fair to Kenny Minchey, but just think about it, right? Kenny Minchey, in order to win this job, has to win it by a mile. Like it can't even be close. Because if it is like a draw between him and CJ Carr, they're probably going to give it to Carr because they look at him as the future. They think that he is going to develop and he has a higher ceiling than any one of these guys. So if they start Minchey, why would Steve Angeli stick around, right? He's gone. And then you also run the risk of losing CJ Carr. It's something to consider. So Kenny Minchey would have to win the job by a mile, and I just don't see that happening. Now, I could be totally wrong about all this. I am totally open to that idea. I'm not here to say for certain Kenny Minchey is not going to win this job. And as I said in the first segment, I laid it all out. I think he has the potential to be a good college quarterback. But considering what we know they have in Angeli, and the fact that Angeli has clearly separated himself from Minchey throughout these past 2 seasons, I just don't expect that to all change in one spring. I'm also very high on CJ Carr, and if CJ Carr is as good as I think that he can be, then he will likely have a better chance of beating out Steve Angeli. So what does that mean for Kenny Minchey's future at Notre Dame? If he loses this battle, he's likely QB3 at best heading into the fall, and there's really no path for him to start barring injury, and that would be his 3rd season as the 3rd-string quarterback. Most 3rd-string quarterbacks, especially guys with the talent of Kenny Minchey, they don't stick around for 3 years. And I hate doing this because I don't know how Kenny Minchey is approaching the situation, and I hate saying like, oh, this guy is definitely going to leave because we don't know. Maybe he just wants to stay at Notre Dame. That's certainly possible, but this is typically how it works in college football. 3rd-string quarterbacks don't really stick around all that long. Sometimes even backup quarterbacks don't stick around all that long. Like Joe Burrow lost the starting job in a quarterback battle to Dwayne Haskins when they were both at Ohio State after Joe Burrow had waited his time. Then he had to leave for LSU. He didn't want to leave, but he had to leave if he wanted to play meaningful college football, and that gave him the best chance to play. We all saw how that turned out. And am I saying Kenny Minchey's going to be Joe Burrow? I highly doubt that. But my point is that there are probably better opportunities for him to play elsewhere. And if he enters the portal, he could be a very attractive option for quarterback-needy programs looking for young talent with upside. Maybe some programs out there who haven't recruited all that well at quarterback. They could go out there and get a guy like Kenny Minchey, who's been around a big-time college football program for 2 years, has a bunch of raw talent, and he could have a path to starting. But the tricky thing is, I don't know when he graduates. He's been around since the spring semester of 2023, so I would imagine that he's pretty close to getting his degree. I don't know how many credits he has. I'm not going to speculate, but that's another thing to factor into the equation here because I still think he has a chance to win the job, but compared to the others, I believe it's unlikely. So maybe he decides to stick around, get his degree, and then move as a grad transfer, but I don't know if he can do that by the end of this spring. If he does decide to stick around, then I believe Notre Dame would have probably the deepest quarterback room in the country if Steve Angeli, CJ Carr, and Kenny Minchey all stay for next season. I would say that's unlikely. And hey, there's also the possibility that CJ Carr starts, Steve Angeli leaves, and they convince Kenny Minchey to stick around and be a backup because he's truly just one play away. There's also the chance that they have to move away from CJ Carr during this season because asking a redshirt freshman to come in and start for you is a tall task. And if he's not ready, then maybe Kenny Minchey comes in. I would say that this is the least likely of all the potential situations, but maybe he's willing to wait it out one more year, get his degree, and go from there. Unfortunately, 2 of these guys have to lose. That's just the reality of the situation. And one person has to come in third. And I believe that will be Kenny Minchey. But he could prove me wrong. I have been wrong many times before. He could prove a lot of people wrong because I don't think all that many people are giving him a chance to compete. I think he deserves a shot. I think he's going to have a chance. But ultimately, I just don't think he's going to win it. I think he's going to come in third. Rooting for Kenny Minchey no matter what happens, though. That's going to do it for me today. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. I'm going to be right back here tomorrow morning with men's basketball beat writer Tom Noy to hear his thoughts on everything that has gone wrong for Micah Shrewsbury's crew this season. I'm recording this before the Boston College game, so I don't know the final just yet. But it's been a while since we talked some hoops on the show, and honestly, it's for a reason. The men's basketball program hasn't given us a whole lot of good things to talk about lately, but I'm sure Tom Noy is going to have more insight into why the season has been such a disappointment and what comes next for this group. Then I'm going to be back early next week, probably on Monday, to finish the quarterback series with a deep dive into CJ Carr's chances to be the starting quarterback. Just remember, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. I know it's the offseason, but we got plenty of great stuff coming your way. And if you enjoyed today's show, remember to give this video a like if you're watching along on YouTube, or rate the podcast 5 stars and leave a review on your preferred platform. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you on Friday.